Hey guys, how's it going? And happy Friday. I hope you all are doing good. Now, my title looks very similar to last week, but look at the end of it. It says the 2A in guns and ammo in 2025 forecast update. Yeah, a lot's happened in the last week, and I'm still trying to be optimistic, but this year has definitely started off pretty rocky, and there's some stuff that I think should be a concern, and I think it should remind us of why we have the Second Amendment and why there's a parallel between every time the Second Amendment is under attack the most, which it is still right now. Just remember the current former vice president is still in the White House, still the commander in chief. And in my opinion, he's doing everything he can to make us less safe and make more people around the world hate us. And well, we've seen two major so called terrorist attacks just in the last couple days in areas where it's pretty hard to carry a gun. At least they're trying to make it pretty hard to carry a gun with the city of New Orleans. Now, Louisiana, very pro Second Amendment state, but the city of New Orleans kind of reminds me of the Democrats in Michigan, as they want to do with Detroit. They're trying to make this whole street where this attack happened a gun-free zone. And why is it that every single time the Democrats run a city or a state, it goes to heck like immediately, and it stays that way, and people keep voting that way? You guys can answer that in the chat. So we're going to get into this because I'm not exactly sure I have quite the good vibe for this year that I did last week. I'm just being honest with you. I don't want to be a downer, but I don't want to sit here and be blissfully ignorant and say, oh, geez, everything's okay in the world, because it's actually probably not. But that's why I carry a gun, and hopefully all of you are carrying a gun, and hopefully all of you have enough ammo, because without ammo, probably be better off with a sharp stick in many areas, actually. But before we do, I want to thank all of you for the many ways you help support the channel. I want to thank all of my channel members, which there's a lot of you in here right now. Make sure you guys are checking out that bonus content, as well as the extra emojis that you get in the chat. Same thing with my Patreon supporters, as well as my local supporters. Locals is a different site, censorship free. Make sure you're following me over there for bonus weekly live streams, as well as their sister company that rhymes with Fumble. Also check me out on X, and there's a bunch of links down in the description, including myriad.social, because this site's cool and I love hanging out with all of you, but it's not so cool because I can only post like half the stuff that I want to here, and probably only talk about 1/10 of what I want to. So make sure you're checking me out on other censorship-free platforms. So good to see all of you guys tonight. Oh, look here. Here's our favorite Michigan State Representative, Jamie Thompson. Wishing you all a happy new year. And man, I just can't wait until, look, they had a, well, it depends who you ask. They may or may not have had a sine die on the 31st. We watched that late at night. We'll talk more about that later, because like I told you guys, it didn't quite look like they were doing everything right. But at the same time, we have what, 5 more days? 5 more days, and Jamie and all of her Republican colleagues are going to take control of the Michigan House of Representatives. And look, I hope this is what I really want to emphasize to all of you. We probably won't see the onslaught of gun control coming through in Michigan that we did when the Democrats had the trifecta for the past 2 years. However, just because the Republicans are in charge now of the House, Gretchen's still the governor for 2 more years. The Senate's still going to be Democrat controlled for 2 more years. We can't just sit back and do nothing. Even though the House isn't going to be able to just pass whatever they want all the way to the governor on day one, we need to start building momentum for these next elections in 2026. So maybe the Republicans can get a trifecta of pro-Second Amendment. That's the most important part. See, we have to say pro-Second Amendment first before we even start talking about parties. Because all of you know I actually can't stand the 2-party system, but there are a lot of pro-Second Amendment people that are Republicans. Not all of them all the time, but there's no pro-Second Amendment Democrats in Lansing whatsoever. Not one House member, not one Senate member, and you don't have to take my word for it. It's literally provable by their voting record. But I know there's some stuff that Speaker-elect Matt Hall can do. I know there's some stuff that the Republican majority can do regarding power of the purse and funding or lack of funding for certain things within the House. There's some policies that the Speaker can reverse like on day one. So with that said, I hope all of you are staying very active in the Second Amendment fight in your home state. Since I'm in Michigan, I'm going to say especially in Michigan right now, because look, we get a little forward momentum, and here's the problem that a lot of us have. And you guys know exactly what I'm talking about, especially in the 2A community and many, though. It's just this is what we focus on. As soon as people get a little victory, they kind of like to get a little bit lazy sometimes. And they like to kind of step back and be like, okay, we dodged a bullet. We're done. Let's just check out. Let's go to sleep for a couple of years. And I definitely don't want you all to go to sleep for a couple of years. And to try to lead by example and get you guys motivated, I'm going to be there on the very first day of session. So the House is going into session on the 8th, I think around 11 o'clock in the morning, and I'm going to be up there. So literally within minutes of the new legislature finishing their first session, before it, afterwards, I'm going to be catching people in the hallways, in their offices, wherever. I'm going to start talking about plans for the Second Amendment, and that's why I'm going there. So I want to let you guys know I'm not slowing down with trying to protect and defend the Second Amendment in Michigan and in these United States, because you talk about laws and you talk about the Constitution being the supreme law of the land, and we need to keep reminding ourselves of that, keep reminding other people of that. Everyone likes to look at things as it's so convoluted, and it's like, well, what does it actually mean? Well, here's the beauty of what this country's supposed to be and what this country's supposed to mean. Where the founding fathers wrote our founding documents, where literally a fourth grader could understand it. Actually, somebody with no formal education can understand it, because here's what I've observed nowadays, where we have the educational industrial complex, because that's actually what it is have we gotten any smarter? Has our education become any better since 1979 when Jimmy Carter put in the Department of Education? I don't think so, actually. Why do we have people like Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy saying, well, we need to bring all the smart people in with these H-1B visas? So, yeah, there's all kinds of stuff with that if you just sat back and think about it. When the founding fathers wrote the Constitution and when they wrote the Bill of Rights, it was written in 1789, ratified as the supreme law of the land in 1791. A fourth grader could understand it. A regular person that didn't even go to school at all could understand it, actually, because we didn't have compulsory education. We didn't have state and federal mandated curriculums back in 1789, 1791 era. But they wrote the words very specifically, very profoundly, actually, and very, very easy to understand. So just because things get better, which we want things to get better, and I'm very happy things might be getting a little better in Michigan, you can't sit back, because we won't truly have America until every last gun control law is repealed. Because in a country where the supreme law of the land says a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, just think about that for a minute. There's no ambiguity as to why we need this well-regulated militia. It's necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And that means we the people. That means regular people. See, in the United States, there's not supposed to be different classes of people. We're not supposed to have titles of nobility. You don't need a concealed carry card to have the right to keep and bear arms. No, the right of the people, which includes all people. It doesn't just include, look at what the Democrats just tried to do in Michigan. They tried to ban guns by statute from the Capitol, from the House office building and Senate office building, but exempt themselves. Just think about that. They're literally not even hiding anymore. They're telling you, we're going to infringe on the Second Amendment. We're going to have a separate class system in the United States. And I think about all this, and it's like, these people are literally crazy. But somehow they use projection, because that's about the only skill they have. And they like to make you think that you are. You know, I hear them often on the other side saying stuff like, well, why do you need a gun? I need a gun because I don't trust the government. Look, there's bad people among me. There's bad people in Lansing. There's bad people in Washington, D.C. And I just want to be able to protect myself from all enemies, foreign or domestic or otherwise. But they sit there and they have hypocrisy because these people actually love guns, of course. Only if they can have them. Only if the ruling class can have them. And they want to segregate us into all types of different class systems, which actually kind of sort of reminds me of this whole H-1B visa thing that's going on. Now, a lot of the people that are of the MAGA crowd maybe still are, and especially were a little while ago, pretty mad at Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy. Okay, you guys can sound off in the chat because I'm sure there's different opinions on that, and I encourage a lively debate, actually. But you look at a lot of these people, they're supposedly these high-skilled workers, but they come in on a lottery. So how high-skilled, like, look, the most high-skilled person needs to come in, they say, because we don't have enough high-skilled people here. But then they let them in on a lottery. And at the end of the day, this goes back to indentured servitude, if you really think about it, bringing people in for a lower wage in many cases. In most cases, having them work for way less money than what the company could pay an American, with a threat hanging over their head that if you mess up, if you don't keep your job, if you don't walk the line, we can deport you. Now, a lot of these H-1B, now there's H-2B, H-1B. H-1B we're still talking about here. Many of them come from a country called India. Has anyone ever heard of it? Now, India, it's a very complex country. It's very large. I don't know how much they have it in all places, but they still have, to a decent extent, the caste system. Where if you're born into a certain family, you're allowed to perform certain types of work, right? Where if you want to be able to make, like, knives, you probably can't make knives necessarily for a living unless your dad and your grandfather, etc., was a blacksmith. It happens sometimes, but it's actually still very hard to marry above your grade, your classification of a person. And then I think about it, and it's supposed to be normal, but it should never be normal, because this is completely antithetical to the United States of America, where, well, people that are of better men that are able to pay their $135 and then pay for their, it's called CPL in Michigan, CCW, wherever you live, right? Only of the better men that go and take a class and pay money to their county and to their state, respectively, then they earn the right to be able to keep and bear arms concealed. And that's not okay. See, we don't need laws that tell us we can do anything. And that's why I kind of don't like constitutional carry laws at all. And I'm kind of going against the grain here, so hear me out. Because I know, like, everybody in the 2A community is like, we need a constitutional carry law. No, actually, we don't. We have the Second Amendment that says the right to keep and bear arms, and it shall not be infringed. And every state has a different version of the Second Amendment. Almost all of them, actually. I think there's 2 that don't. But in Michigan, every person has the right to keep and bear arms in defense of himself and of the state. And that's Michigan Constitution, Article 1, Section 6. Yeah, that includes all people as well. Now, you actually don't need laws that are for constitutional carry. You just need to repeal all of the laws that are already on the books that violate the Second Amendment. Yeah, I know, it sounds kind of corny in a way, but that is how it actually has to work. If there's a law on the books, well, first of all, we shouldn't even be having to have this conversation because the Constitution says shall not be infringed. Very early United States Supreme Court precedent, Marbury v. Madison, 1803. All laws that are repugnant to the Constitution, those are void. And that should still be case law, but somehow it's not because they don't follow it anymore. But at the end of the day, we should just follow the darn Constitution. Now, what we want our legislatures to do, and this is what I encourage you to be, I say lobbying, not that you're going to register as a lobbyist, but citizens actively getting involved to remind these people, hey, you work for us, and we need you to start following the Constitution or else you're fired. We need a lot more grassroots of that because there's not as many people involved as you might think. You need to be encouraging your legislature, because I know a lot of you are sitting there saying, dude, I live in the great state of whatever, and that's awesome, and trust me. But we have constitutional carry so we're good. I'd start looking at it a little bit different. No, you need to have your state legislatures, and then maybe eventually the United States Congress start repealing gun control laws that you already have. So if there's a law that prohibits concealed carry or establishes a license for concealed carry, you repeal that law. You don't pass a law saying, we hereby, the lords and ladies, right, of the, I'll make this up, let's see here, Montana House of Representatives and Senate, right? We hereby grant you the right to carry a gun without a license. No, not really, actually. That's actually a privilege, because whoever has the power to give you something has the power to take it away. And the Constitution doesn't grant you any rights at all. Especially the Second Amendment doesn't grant you any rights at all. It doesn't say in the Second Amendment anywhere that you have the right to keep and bear arms because it's so written. It doesn't say that at all. It doesn't say, I, James Madison, hereby do declare that I give you the right to keep and bear arms, and I'm telling you it shall not be infringed. It doesn't say that at all, but a lot of people act like that is what it says. They say, well, you have the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. No, actually you don't, but that's a good thing, because your right's actually much more powerful than that. Your rights come from God. These are the laws of nature. And if nature's God is what Thomas Jefferson wrote in the Declaration of Independence, when he also wrote that all men are created equal, and they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. And among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So rights come from whoever created you, whoever put you here. I assume you believe that same entity. I know everyone doesn't believe the same exact thing, but I believe God put me here, and then God's going to take me away. And God's the one that grants me the right to keep and bear arms as long as I'm here. And since nobody, not even the great founding fathers, as great as they were, since nobody on this earth gave me the right to keep and bear arms, nobody has the power or the ability or the right, as people say, to take it away. Brings me to the 10th Amendment. And this is something where, and this is where I'm priming you guys to make sure you're educating your Republican legislators, because often mainstream Republican pundits get all this wrong. They say, well, the 10th Amendment means we have states' rights. No, we actually don't have states' rights either. Like, it's so simple. If people would just read the darn 10th Amendment, they'd see it doesn't mention rights at all. It talks about powers. It talks about powers that are delegated to the states and then respectively to we the people. See, the federal government doesn't actually have any rights at all. State governments have no rights at all. Neither does your county government or your city government or your township government or any of these. Now, your individual state representative. So, for example, the Michigan House of Representatives doesn't have any rights. They just have powers that are delegated by we the people. Now, my state representative happens to be a lady named Jamie Thompson, and she's a fine lady. She's a fighter. She's on our side. She has rights as a person. Jamie Thompson has just as many rights as you do and I do, but the Michigan House of Representatives has no rights at all. Now we can look on the other side of the aisle and pick the worst Democrats you could possibly think of. No, not in any particular order, but I'm going to think of this one that used to hold the gavel. Do you guys remember the look on her face? I say she used to hold the gavel. Her name's Lori Pohutsky. Some people say she's not so nice. I'm trying to be as nice as I possibly can. I mean, someone said 2AE to you. You're being a little too nice to Lori Pohutsky. Now, here's the thing, though. She actually has rights, too. She has the same rights as you. She has the same rights as me, but there's no rights in a gavel, and there's no rights in a legislature, and there's no rights in the president of the United States. These are powers that are delegated. And these are powers that they can only have with the consent of the governed. So as we watch Michigan flip its House of Representatives over Republican, this is a good thing, but we need to make sure that these are pro-Second Amendment Republicans. And look, do this in a totally friendly way. Like if you just walk up to somebody like pounding your fist saying, you work for me, you bleepity bleep, bleep, bleep. I mean, that's your right. Like freedom of speech, you can do that. Might not be a good idea if you walk up to someone who's a nice guy and might believe in the Second Amendment as much or almost as much as you do. It might be better just to have a conversation, right? But at the same time, you probably could do that. There may be times for that. There may not be times for that. But here's my challenge for all of you, whatever state you live in, make sure that you're reminding, if you live in a super pro 2A state, or if you live in a state like Michigan that was literally getting ready to like fall down into the pits of you know what, but now we have a little bit of a light with the House. Hopefully we can move forward in the next election. Make sure you're just kind of reiterating some of these basic principles to people. Because I hear in the mainstream media, like when it comes to even like mainstream YouTube, because that is actually the mainstream nowadays. There's more people that watch Tucker Carlson and Crowder and all these other people than they do anything really on like the regular cable TV. But I still hear some of the most famous ones out there saying stuff like, well, in our democracy. No, we don't have a democracy. A democracy is terrible, actually. It's mob rule. It's two wolves voting against one sheep on what's for dinner, and I think we all know the results. But a republic, because that's what we're supposed to be, right? A republic is that well-armed lamb contesting the vote. See, we are a constitutional representative republic, if we can keep it. That's what Ben Franklin said right at the founding of this country. So I want us to keep remembering all this because I'm so tired of hearing our Second Amendment right, okay? Our democracy. It's like, man, when like all of like the influencers on our side constantly use those terms, you're kind of sort of in trouble when you already walk up. Like you're going to go to a fight, but you already put yourself at a disadvantage before you even started by using terms of the left. Terms that were brought into this country a long time ago. You know, we have had different forms of Marxism in this country for well over 100 years now. And somehow they've just changed the parlance in so many different ways. You know, I had a viewer that left a comment the other night. They were watching how stuff was going on in the Michigan House of Representatives. I'll tell you what, the way the Democrats ran things and the way they used that gavel, not a good look for a government. Not a good look at all. That's probably why the people voted them out of the majority, at least in large part, and the fact that people can't afford eggs anymore and all kinds of other things, because the price of eggs is always a little bit more important than anything else, right? They said, this is BS. We're not getting represented. So we should have it where every single person in Michigan they were talking about, every single person gets to vote on every single bill. Now, this isn't just one person, though. And I'm not going to say their name because I'm not trying to, like, pick on them. But this is probably the 50th person that's left me a comment that said that in the last couple months. And I've had quite a few people say that in real life. Now, let me ask the chat. Is there anybody that thinks that's a good idea? Does anyone think it's a good idea that for every single issue in any state, and then you can look at it on the federal level too, just pick your state, whatever state you live in. Do you think every single person in the whole state should be able to cast an equally counted ballot to be able to vote for every law? While you guys are thinking of something to type, do you guys agree with the 17th Amendment of the United States Constitution? Because I actually don't. Okay. Well, the first chat I got says, heck yeah, we should be able to. Okay. Well, don't forget to give me a thumbs up, guys. And if you're new to the channel, welcome. Make sure you subscribe because I might be an unpopular person among my own chat tonight. But yeah, the first one I got, heck yeah, we should all be able to. Okay, anyone else agree? Wow. Okay. You guys think that every single person in Michigan should get to cast a vote on every single law? Well, so far it's unanimous. 100% in the chat. Everybody says that, yeah, for sure. And heck yeah. Probably should. Okay. No, I'm not talking about voting in elections, guys. I said for every law. Okay. Every person gets to vote on, I don't know, you pick it, whether there's cage-free eggs or not. That all the way up to and including so-called safe storage laws. Every single person. Okay, well, this is why we find ourselves in the shape we're in. See, the United States Constitution was founded, right, that we would have a representative constitutional republic. Because as I just said, direct democracy is mob rule. Do you want to look at what happened in Greece under direct democracy? So, all right. So basically, now people get mad at me. I'm just like, wow, I'm almost speechless. I've literally been doing this for this long. And I've literally said this every day for like 5 years. A republic, if you can keep it, a representative constitutional republic. And almost every single person in my chat right now who watches me every week, which means we're friends, that's cool, but doesn't think we should have a representative constitutional republic. Interesting. So here's the interesting part. Here's why we would literally lose. Okay? Here's why we would lose on everything. Because when the anti-Second Amendment crowd wants to show up, they can bring thousands of people into the Capitol right after the tragedy in Michigan State happened. They bus in the college kids. They bus in the whatevers. They bus in the homeless. They bus in all the people that are living on a system. Okay? All right. When we say we need to hold a rally, and I saw my friend Crazy Heathen in the chat here, I can't believe that like 99% of my own chat is telling me you guys want direct democracy where every person votes on every single bill, when that's like completely and utterly antithetical to the Constitution. And wow, no wonder we find ourselves in the shape we're in. Most of the constitutional patriot Second Amendment supporters hate the United States. I'm trying to keep my chin up, but wow, this is tough. All right. Let me tell you what would happen, and I'm not guessing this is going to happen. I'm going to tell you this would happen for 100% fact. When people on the left want to have their anti-Second Amendment thing at the Capitol, they fill the whole thing up. Thousands of them. Okay, thousands of them. When we hold a Second Amendment rally, 10, 20, 30, 50 people show up. And the most common thing is, well, I had to work. I had to work that day. I get it. Somebody has to work somewhere to pay for all the people that don't work. So what you're going to find will happen, and this is going to be on every big issue, all the people from the inner cities will be able to vote on each and every bill because you pretty much have to make it your full-time job. Lobbyists and special interests will pay them to bust them into the polling stations. They'll give them, you're not allowed to pay people to vote. Okay, let me make that clear. But they'll have roundabout ways where it's technically legal. You know what I mean? It'll be technically legal. And they'll get them there. And yeah, we'll pretty much have the state of Michigan and every state in this whole country will flip to be like the most leftist that there possibly is. You will have, if you live in the state of Michigan, Detroit, Michigan, will come in. And now, especially with these mail-in ballots and all these different types of things, mass ballot collections, we would literally never, ever, ever get anything other than leftist stuff passed. And I would say that would hold true like 99% of the time. Instead of having Michigan split up into 110 House districts, you would have Michigan split up into like 3. I'm serious. And you would literally have like a major city like Detroit or a major city like Ann Arbor, places like that would literally come in and wipe out, like one city would wipe out like 20 other counties in one foul swoop if you literally just took everything as a popular vote majority. We'd be on our way to Marxism and communism within minutes. If you look at direct democracies in the past, they've literally always failed every time. Like, literally, a monarchy is terrible, but a monarchy is actually a much more stable government and actually like a less tyrannical government than straight democracy where everybody votes on every single thing. Now, you go back to about 100 years ago, the 17th Amendment passed. Okay? The 17th Amendment passed that amended the Constitution, and it made our country a lot worse. See, a lot of people don't even know who their state legislators are anymore. You should know, and that's a big problem because your state laws, wherever you live, are going to affect your day-to-day life even a lot more than federal laws. It's a big misconception. The way the Constitution was written is your state legislators were supposed to elect your United States Senator. They were supposed to be an ambassador, if you will, that was to go to Washington, D.C. to represent the interests of that state, being the upper chamber of the United States legislature. There would be 100, since we have 50 states now. There were way less back then, obviously, but let's fast forward to the numbers we're working with now. With a House of Representatives of 435. So the House of Representatives, you would elect them to represent the people. The people that live in their congressional district would go to D.C. to represent the interest of the people. That's why there would be about 4.3 times more of them than senators, so that you could live relatively close and maybe have a chance of actually meeting your United States representative. They needed to be hands-on, spending a lot of time in their community. You run into a situation, though, now where they have to spend so much time fundraising, you barely even see your United States legislators in real life, and that's wrong. But back to the United States Senate. Say, not only would Representative Jamie Thompson and Senator Joe Bellino, those are my Michigan representatives and senators, not only would they be casting votes throughout the session for Michigan laws, but they would also have key and very important votes on who the United States senators would be. And if we still did it that way, we would have a super majority of Republicans in the United States Senate right now. And virtually for this whole time, for the last 100 years, would have had a strictly conservative majority. Okay? It's kind of crazy to think about, but this would have been this way for, it would have waxed and waned at certain points, but I was looking at a whole chart of how that would be if you actually had the Michigan legislature. Now, the Republicans were holding, there was times for almost 40 years where the Republicans in Michigan would hold the House and Senate for decades on end, with some Democrat governors sprinkled in, some Republican governors sprinkled in. But Michigan literally has not had a Republican United States senator. All right. A quick piece of trivia. Who remembers the last Republican United States senator from Michigan? I know the answer. I'm just seeing if anyone else does. I'll give you a hint. It was over 25 or more years ago. Other than a one-term Republican senator. The last one was literally back at the end of the last century. That's the last time Michigan has had a Republican United States senator. We had Senator Carl Levin. We had Senator Debbie Stabenow, Gary Peters, and now Alyssa Slotkin, United States senator. You know, it's kind of sad. I mean, it's kind of funny, but it's not really funny because it's so sad. A lot of people told me their Michigan representative was Alyssa Slotkin. You know, I mean, I don't even know what else to say to that because I'm trying to be nice. A lot of people said their Michigan representative is Debbie Dingle. Yeah. No, that's not true, actually, but whatever. Literally, like, okay, so Slotkin's vote came up during the Democrat trifecta. So Slotkin, if she was the one that was put up, would have actually been elected by the Democrat-controlled House and Senate. But before that, we would have had all Republican United States senators in Michigan for like 40 years. Isn't that crazy? Yes, John Q. Public, Spencer Abraham. Yep, Spencer Abraham. And right around the turn of this last century, right? That's the first one. So that literally shows that what happens when you have mob rule. Just think about this for a minute. If everyone had just a one vote on everything, how come Michigan has only elected Democrat United States senators for like 25 years? Because we vote them on the state level in a direct democracy fashion. Everybody in the state just gets to vote for their United States senator. Meanwhile, by having the many Michigan House and Senate districts, for decades, Michigan would, as a whole, collectively, but separately, that's the key to this, separately, with all the different districts, would have a Republican majority in the state House and state Senate, while the United States Senate, direct democracy type vote, right, goes Democrat every single time. Yeah. Look at the different times where you had Governor Granholm, 2 terms in office. Again, that's a direct democracy. Everybody in the state just gets to, whoever has the most votes wins that office. Meanwhile, the Michigan legislature, Republican controlled. All right. We could go on to Whitmer for 2 terms for her first. Well, House terms are 2 years, Senate are 4 years. But look at the Republicans controlling it for the first 4 years. Whitmer was in office. Then for 2 years, they controlled everything. Now the Michigan House is taken control by the Republicans again. So I'm trying to give you guys some real life just to show you like how that actually works. And then you look at, now I said on the state level, but now was my original question. Do you guys think everybody in the state of Michigan should get to vote on every single law? Well, tried to explain that the best I could. And then the United States, it's the Electoral College. Now, I didn't originally ask you guys if you wanted a direct democracy for the United States. I just said for your state, where every single person gets to vote on every single bill. See, you have to remember, there's lots of organized people on the left. So the United States has the Electoral College, right? That's different. And I'm not going to say that everyone here wants to abolish that because I did not ask that question. So back to the state thing again. There's lots of special interest groups that have ways of having a tight-knit group, okay, and getting all of their members to vote in certain ways. Now, not in all cases. Not in all cases. However, generally speaking, the unions tend to back the Democrats, tend to hand out lots of literature, lots and lots and lots of literature to urge and to educate. I'll just say that very politely. Sometimes it's even a little more forceful than that. Their members to all vote how the union wants them to vote. And I know a lot of you guys are in the union and you're typing as fast as you can right now. I'm in the union and I vote Republican. I know. Trust me, I have a lot of union member friends that were literally cursing under their breath every day for a couple months before this last election because they were literally getting inundated with vote for Kamala Harris, vote for Alyssa Slotkin. I mean, you know what I'm saying? So Republicans don't really have like this whole like network like Democrats do. And I think it's pretty easy to explain if you think about it. Republicans like to be more independent typically, or conservatives do. And there's a lot of people like me that don't like to identify with any party, but you tend to find more good people on the Republican side than the Democrat side. So your voting record looks like you're a Republican, but you kind of are, but you're not really. Really, there's no home for you at all in the political world. You just want the Second Amendment, the First Amendment, and Third Amendment, and Fourth, Fifth, Sixth, Seventh, Eighth, Ninth, 10th. You want the Bill of Rights, right? You want the Constitution. You believe in the principles of the Declaration of Independence. You like the Articles of Confederation. That was our Constitution for about a decade, right? So you're kind of like, dude, I just want it like how it's supposed to be. But you still find yourself in many cases either excited to vote for a Republican sometimes, or you're voting for the lesser of two evils. But people like us don't really like to be part of like a group or like a hive mind that tells us how we have to think. A lot of people on the left, though, really do like to join these groups. For example, you will see more Moms Demand Action members showing up in Lansing anytime there's a gun control bill than you will the members of Second Amendment groups. And I've seen it so many times, right? So the collective, the collectivist, the hive mind, the whatever, tends to be a lot more Democrat leaning. And again, I'm going to say this one more time because it's very important, and I know it's true. A lot of you guys are or were in your life members of a certain union, and they told you to vote or encouraged you to vote in a certain way, and you said, F you, I won't do what you told me, right? And you voted how you wanted to. So I totally get that, but look at the statistics. Look at the odds. And you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Tend to lean heavily into voting for Democrats. So those are some things I want you guys to think about. Now, you guys are talking about lobbyists. Yeah, ban lobbyists. That's the big thing. Yeah, I know. Ban lobbyists. And I don't get it how corporations are considered people. Like, I don't agree with Citizens United, actually, where, and I'm not a lawyer either, but the gist of it is corporations are people, so they have a First Amendment protected right to be able to donate as much money as they want. And then there's these weird ways where foreign lobbyists, as long as they register as such, they can lobby our politicians. And then there's some that don't even register as foreign lobbyists, but they clearly are. No, none of that. Nobody foreign should be able to put one penny into our elections on the local level all the way up to the president. I think that's completely and utterly ridiculous. And it goes back to like what I said earlier. The Michigan House of Representatives has no rights. That body doesn't have rights. They have powers that are delegated by the people. Now, Representative Jamie Thompson's a person, and she absolutely has rights, of course. Senator Bellino, Joe Bellino is a person. Of course, he has rights, but the Michigan Senate doesn't. And I'd like to use that analogy for the corporation. Say a corporation has, I don't know, 10 officers on the board and the board, and they also have like, I don't know, 990 people working for them. Of course, the CEO of the corporation is a person and they have First Amendment protected rights. Of course, that person can donate to their favorite political candidate, right? And so can all the people that work there, all the way down to the person washing the toilets. Everybody can donate their money to a political candidate because I do believe that falls under First Amendment protections. I believe it's free speech. So yes, the members that work for a company, the people that work there in their individual capacity, yeah, of course, with a limit, okay? There's a cap to where the richest person in the world might be able to donate, more than a person like me or you, but they won't be able to donate 1 million times more than us, right? But no, it's like every single person that works there gets to donate to their candidate of their choice or candidates up to, the legal limit. But then the corporation itself gets like personhood, First Amendment protected rights as an entity, and then it can donate this huge amount. And I don't think that makes a lot of sense, and I think that's actually really, really bad, and that's why so many people look at it look at it like it's rigged and like there's only a few people that get to pick what's going on. Yeah. The stuff with super PACs has gotten completely and utterly out of control. I agree. In most states, the 2A barely exists. I know there's not. Look, trust me, guys, there's way more special interest money. There's way more useful idiots, as Stalin coined, on the anti-2A side than there is the pro-Second Amendment side. Trust me. That's why, although there's certain things that make me encouraged coming up here on state and federal politics, we need to pay attention. And we need to remind the people of what they're there for. And yeah, Jane Locke, I agree. Ban super PACs. Absolutely. I think they're terrible. Yeah. Yeah, and just to make sweeping statements like all corporations are bad and all people that work for a corporation are bad. Well, that's not true because I know some, look, I own a small mom and pop, extremely small landscaping business. Am I filing as a corporation? No, so it might not be the exact equivalency, but I do have a couple LLCs. And yeah, so I don't like to make a sweeping statement that all people that own a corporation are bad people because that's actually not true. I know of small corporations. It's between them and their accountant and whatever, which I'm not one of those. So I have no idea what's best for people to do. But I know corporations that have like 5 or 6 people working for them, you know? Heck, I know someone who's like a single member corporation as far as I know. And again, I don't know exactly how they file their taxes, but the name of their business is such and such Inc. And they're the only one that works there as far as I know. So, I mean, just to say that everyone who's like works for or owns a corporation needs to go to jail, I'm not going to go that far because just to say all corporations is like way oversimplifying things in my opinion, right? So what do you guys think coming up here? Because there's a lot of stuff going on right now. Speaker Johnson just got elected again to the United States House of Representatives. And somebody was just talking to me the other day, and I think they're onto something with this. I don't know if it's going to be enough. What's happening, Denny's Plant-Based Journey? How you doing, man? But look, they said, well, if this Ukraine war ever stops, that might ease the ammo supply. I agree. Here's my question for you all, though. Do you think it's going to stop? And if so, how soon? Because here's the thing, man. I'm sure glad it's not Kamala. Oh, boy. Could you imagine if Kamala was the president-elect right now? How terrible it'd be? Okay, so Trump wins the election. He campaigned on. He said, if you elect me, I will end the Ukraine war as president-elect. Well, he doesn't have a lot of time to end that war as president-elect. I don't think he can end it as president-elect. Okay, so the next question is, if he can't do it as president-elect, which is what he promised, the next question will be, look, I'm not trying to start this, I'm mad at Trump thing. I'm just telling you guys the truth. He said, I'll end it with a phone call as president-elect. It hasn't ended yet. Maybe he can in the next 2 weeks. So what do you guys think? Is the Ukraine war going to end in the next 2 weeks? And if not, when do you think it ends? And that is part of the outlook of how the guns and ammo market and situation is going to look this year. Is there going to be mass tragedy events? Because that tends to spark how much interest there is, how much consumerism there is, okay? Just tell me the truth, guys. Like, I'm not going to make fun of anybody at all. Like, dude, almost all my friends are like super MAGA. So I'm not ripping on him. I'm just asking the question because I really want to know what other people are thinking about this right now. Okay. Is Trump going to end that Ukraine war in the next 2 weeks? Right? Is it going to take him like a month after he's, actual president? Is it going to be 6 months? Is it going to be a year? 2 years? 4 years? Will the war still be going on when Trump gets out of office? I just want to know what you guys think. I'm not ruling it out yet, but I just see the time dwindling very quickly here to get it over as president-elect. So that's probably not going to happen, I think. But tell me if I'm wrong, because I want to be optimistic. I just want to try to get some other people's opinions here, because I don't want to just be like foolishly optimistic. And then I also don't want to just be overly critical on Trump, because there's plenty of criticism that's due there, obviously. But I don't want to be critical on everything just to be, black-pilled or be a naysayer either. Speaker Johnson's been reelected as Speaker of the House. Well, last time I checked, he was going against a lot of conservative Republicans' will, passing huge Ukraine funding packages. Seems like to me, with the Republican-controlled House the last couple of years, there was no amount of ammunition they wouldn't send to the Ukraine, actually, and the Senate as well. Mitch McConnell's Senate. Mass tragedies. New Orleans. Just the other day. A terrorist. Mowing down people. Spraying into a crowd before the police appears quickly dispatched him. It makes you think about it, doesn't it? If you're walking around a street fair or going to a parade in your hometown, should they ban cars? Should they ban pickup trucks? What do you think? United States Army veteran. Served in the United States Armed Services. Trained by hardworking people like me and you and our tax dollars. How many immigrants should we have in this country? I mean, everyone was an immigrant at one point, but there was a time when this country needed more people. We had like the untamed territories in the West where you had to wrestle with an alligator for your dinner and stuff. Like, a lot's changed. Because I know that's everybody's first comeback. Well, if they banned immigrants, you wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here. Well, yeah, but is there ever a point in time where we have just enough people here? Is there ever a time where you know the old saying? And I mean this with great affection, actually. I did live in a mobile home for a few years when I was younger. But you know the old saying, you can take the girl out of the trailer park, but you can't take the trailer park out of the girl. And that can actually be meant as a total compliment. That's not even a put down, but it's still true nonetheless. There's awesome things about trailer park girls. I'm just saying, look. You can take the jihadi out of the Middle East, right? You know what I mean? No, I don't think so. You can take the jihadi out of the Middle East and bring him here, but you're not going to take the jihadi out of him. How much more peace are we going to have in this country where as fast as we can, we're importing people whose cultures have literally been fighting since biblical times? You can read like the oldest writings out there. Pick the Bible. Pick secular books if that's your thing, if that's what you're into. Certain types of people ain't ever gotten along, and they've always been fighting. And fighting. And fighting. Which is no surprise, because this has always been a battle of good versus evil, and it always will be. So how is it that right now, you have to remember the current former vice president and his administration are doing everything they can to completely tank and ruin this country in the waning weeks, to make it very difficult, and their goal is to make it impossible for Trump to do anything good. It's very obvious what they're doing right now. Some of them are even bragging about it. But then you think about it, and some people say, you heard, and he's backtracked on some of it, but President Musk has talked about the H-1B and all this, and Vivek Ramaswamy. You know what I mean? Some of the stuff they've said. Now, they've walked it back, and they've this, and they've that. But, hey, man, I mean, what do you believe? Do you believe the stuff they said a year ago? Do you believe what they said 2 weeks ago? Or do you believe what they said 12 days ago because of the backlash? I don't know. Pick which version of them you want to believe, but certain versions of them are still wanting to prioritize trying to dilute down America as much as they possibly can. Meanwhile, we keep fighting these wars, these endless wars that don't really appear to be making anybody any safer. If you look around the time of World War I, actually, when the United States first started to assert that it wanted to officially be the world's policeman, it's right within that same 10-year span that we got rid of the direct election of senators. It's right around the time that the income tax was established. The Federal Reserve was established. Women's suffrage. All these things happen within a very short period of time. And now it seems like instead of looking forward to our natural rights in the Constitution, all we get to look forward to is the next war that's going to maybe inflate the economy a little bit, but it doesn't even matter because it's all a fiat currency. And we haven't been on the gold standard in over 50 years now. They don't issue silver certificates anymore either. You know, you can print all this cash, but you go back to, again, around 100 years ago, a little more than that now, and you look at Germany and the Weimar Republic, right? Where they had such hyperinflation of their notes in the 19 teens that they were burning them. They were burning wheelbarrows full of them and buckets full of their bills, their paper notes, because they were more valuable for heat than they were as actual currency. Now we can talk about places like Zimbabwe. Okay. This is a real note. Not anymore, but this was at that time when it was printed. The Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, $10 billion. There was a point in time where you would have had to spend this to buy a loaf of bread. Then there was a point in time, maybe a couple days later, where it wouldn't even buy you a loaf of bread anymore. But I mentioned Germany too, because it's not just like, oh, well, that's just like that part of the world that would happen in. No. See the industrious worker there running a big pneumatic jackhammer and the big dam, making electricity. The thriving country of Zimbabwe with complete and utter hyperinflation. I don't know what the economy is going to be like next year either. So we've got a big war going on. No doubt fueled by the military-industrial complex. Trump said he's going to end the war as president-elect. And here's the thing. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he does want to. And I'm also going to assume he's probably trying right now. Can he do it, though? Well, there's two questions you have to ask yourself. I said I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and assume he wants to. But then even assuming he wants to, can he? Now, some of you are thinking, no, he doesn't even want to end the war. I don't know. But I'm saying even if I give him the benefit of the doubt that he's going to do everything in his power to end it, can he? We're sending so many billions of rounds. We're sending so much powder, so much ordnance over there right now and throughout many, many other parts of the world that they could literally probably fill up all of our houses till they literally collapsed on the foundation from the weight of it. With just what they've sent over there to Ukraine and Russia for the last couple of years. We're not talking one or two rounds. We're talking complete massive amounts that are almost hard to even comprehend. Remember I talked about all of the howitzer rounds, right? I did a whole stream dedicated to this a year or two ago now. It's been a while. Maybe some of you remember that. You could have loaded and this was just for one of the average run-of-the-mill shells, just one shell. You could have enough powder to reload about 30,000 9mm rounds. And they were keeping track of how many we sent over there until they suddenly stopped reporting that. You remember when that happened? But at that point, it was like, how many millions a month of these rounds were we sending over there? It's like, whoa, wow. So when it comes to the ammo forecast, I don't know. There's the commodity side of things. Then there's the supply and demand side of things. So when you look at the commodity side of things, you've got brass, you've got lead, you've got copper. You have nitrocellulose, which is actually traded on the world market. Don't really make much of it here, obviously. We don't really make much of anything here anymore, actually. But we do, but we don't. Not when it comes to this kind of stuff. There's been a worldwide shortage of that for quite some time. And shortage doesn't mean that you can't find it, just so you guys know. When there's a shortage, it just means you have to pay an inflated price, because if they didn't inflate the price, it would immediately sell out, and then they would have what most people that don't think very well would think of a shortage, meaning you walk in and there's none on the shelf. You do not have to have none on the shelf before there's a shortage. That's just how it works, right? We saw that happening even during when there were big time ammo shortages, 2020, 2021, are a couple of the years in the not too distant memory, even though there's been several instances of this just in my lifetime, like more than 5 or 6. No, when the gun shop owner's like, dude, if I kept my 9mm at 10 per box and I'd sell them all in 5 minutes, he bumps it up to 25 a box. And then when they're like, oh, now I'd still sell it all out in 2 hours, then they bump it up to 50 a box. Why? Because they can't get any more in from their supplier. And if they sell all of it out at very slim profit margins in an hour, they won't have anything else to sell for the next month, maybe 2-3 months to keep their lights on. It's not necessarily that they're price gouging. You just have to, as the supply starts to dwindle or the demand skyrockets, either or. And 2020, 2021, even into 2022 to an extent, we saw where it was both. There was skyrocketed demand and there was reduced supply. So there's that whole thing, right? I think it's good to look at it several ways. There's just the raw commodity end of things. If the whole world, because this is a world commodity when it comes to these resources, if there's a shortage on lead or there's increased demand for lead or brass or any of these things, the prices of them just go up. You might still get them all day long, as many as you want, but if there's more demand in the world and less supply in the world, then the prices go up. That's just how that works. You might be able to still buy 1 million of them, but that still could be reflective of a shortage if the price is twice as much as it would have been otherwise. So there's the commodity end of things, just the raw materials. Then there's the whole supply and demand. If there's reduced supply because they're shipping it all over the world, prices could go up. Right now, we haven't seen that, though, because demand is so low. Demand's down to the basement, dig an extra couple floors below the basement, and that's how low demand is. Now, in the past, we've seen that if there's a mass tragedy or two, we've literally had 2 in the last couple days, right? New Orleans, a guy that was in the army, and then the next one happens out in front of the Trump Hotel in Vegas. From what I understand, current active duty, Special Forces Army, Green Beret, still active duty from what I understand. Does his... Look, I'm not an expert on this. I'm not going to get into all of it, but it's been deemed as a terrorist attack. We'll still say a mass tragedy because people were hurt, but it could have, and many people think was intended to be even more than that, right? So far, it just seems like people are kind of like, ho-hum, whatever. There was a mass tragedy, must be a day that ends in the letter Y, which shows you there's something really, really fundamentally wrong with the mental health in this country. I mean, the mental health of the veterans, the mental health of the people that aren't veterans. I mean, the mental health of all kinds of people is not so good right now. Lots of problems with that. And maybe some of you experts on those things have some awesome ideas as to why. I could take guesses why, but I'm not going to do that here tonight. I'm just thinking about it. It's like, man, with the way 2025 starting, I think there's probably a lot of sleeper cells in this country, if you want to know the truth. If you just want my opinion, I think at the very least, while nobody was looking, they all scampered in here. But actually, I'm not even that naive, man. I literally think this prior administration probably tried to bring as many of them in as they possibly could. And that's sinister. It really is, but it kind of looks that way, doesn't it? Man, I was like telling you guys with a bated breath because I just kind of know how stuff ends up going. But just last week, I was thinking about it and I'm like, man, let's try to be optimistic for this year. I see lots of stuff and I still want you to be, and I still am. But man, whew. Two, and I'm using air quotes because I'm just kind of doing a 40,000 foot overview of two, I guess you'd say, terrorist attacks in the last like 2-3 days. And there's been other ones too, I'm sure. I'm saying like big, nationwide. Everyone's tuning into the news for it. I don't know. It's only going to be a matter of time, and they're going to come out and say, well, we need gun control. Should we ban vehicles? Should we ban all these drugs? I mean, don't dare go after the pharmaceutical industrial complex. Now, some of your results may vary. Some of you guys have been veterans in recent times. Some of you were veterans a long time ago. Either way, I appreciate your service equally. But maybe some of you guys can answer me that either served recently in the military or have a close family member or friend that you trust. But tell me if it goes something like this, because from what I've been hearing from people lately that have served in the last, we'll say last couple decades or so, and even further back than that there's a pill for everything in the military. So I'm sitting there thinking, wait a minute. These people that are shell-shocked the most, you look at this special forces guy, goes and does this with the Tesla, the cyber truck, I guess it's called, right? Doesn't look like much of a truck to me. A real truck's like my old F-350. 7.3 power stroke. You can smell the exhaust, especially when it's warming up. That's a man's truck, but I digress. This truck or whatever it is. Now, they talked about that he was essentially suffering from shell shock. See, it's weird because the military-industrial complex needs us in perpetual war. War does things to people. Obviously, I've never been to war, so I don't know anything about it compared to people who have, but you can just tell from an onlooker standpoint. People you've known that were a certain way, and they come back from the war and they're just not the same anymore. Like, I can observe that without ever serving, right? We're in perpetual war because of the military-industrial complex. And then when these people are suffering mentally, in many cases, they load them up with tons of drugs. Is that because the drugs are helping their mental state? Are all these drugs making us safer? I'm talking psychotropic drugs, mental drugs, whatever you want to call them. I think you guys know the point I'm making, even if my terminologies are a little bit off. And I understand there's people out there that are typing in the chat furiously that it makes you better, whatever drugs you're on. I get it. There's that too. But before we had the military-industrial complex and the pharmaceutical-industrial complex, both, in my opinion, working hand in hand is my point. Us being in endless wars because there's plenty of Halliburtons that need paid and many, many more. Lockheed Martin. I could keep going on and on. And at the same time, I've heard, man, if there's anything going on with you in the military, there's a pill for that and more pills for that. But it's no different in the civilian world, too, because some kids getting picked on in school. Because I don't even teach social skills to kids anymore, even in the schools. Which I'm getting to where I reject the concept of schools, period, more and more lately, actually. All of them, pretty much. But they shove the kids in front of screens and give them tablets. There's kids working in a class together. But they're on the tablet typing to each other when they're 10 feet away. Are you kidding me? I mean, I understand texting people because you got businesses to run, things to do, casual conversations. You want to say hi. That's fine. I text message people as well. But you're watching kids now in classrooms essentially messaging, texting each other, and the kid's sitting right next to them. Nobody has any social skills. Everybody was taught that they get a participation trophy. And since no two snowflakes are identical, which they're not, and that shows you how powerful God is, that he knows every hair on your head and can count every grain of sand in the world and knows what every snowflake's going to look like before they even fall. And there's literally an infinite amount of them. So yes, every snowflake is different, but at the end of the day, everyone's taught that there's some special kind of snowflake, though. If you lose the spelling bee, that's fine. You didn't spell as good as the other one, but you still get a participation trophy. And then when all of a sudden in real life, the rubber meets the road and everybody's not in first place, they don't know how to accept any defeat. So what do? They turn to social media, which that makes the situation more toxic. And then they go to the doctor, and the doctor says, well, all of my classes were taught by executives or lobbyists or whatever from the pharmacy companies, so I don't know how to teach anybody any kind of lifestyle choices. I don't know anything about a good diet. All I know is, well, let me look at my little tablet here. If they have this, prescribe them that. Oh, it's not working. Maybe we'll give you a little more. Oh, that's not working. Let's try something else and give you even more than that. So there's a lot of stuff going on. A lot of stuff that reminds me of the Second Amendment, because there's more and more people out there that are literally losing their minds. And there's always going to be evil people and always going to be good people. But here's the deal. The only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. And there's many things I'm optimistic about, but at the same time, I don't see evil going away anytime soon. I don't know if we're going to see the Ukraine war stop anytime soon. And I certainly already this year don't see any shortages of mass tragedies. Do you? Now, social media is one thing. I don't know that I consider YouTube itself to actually be social media. I guess it kind of is, but kind of not. Because what's the difference? I mean, this is media. And you can watch the Fox News on there tonight. You could watch anything you want on YouTube, actually. Well, this is just a guy sitting here in his shop talking to a bunch of people that are either in your shop or your living room or your basement, or maybe some of you live in warm weather and you're actually sitting outside on your porch. Kind of envious if that's the case. If there's anyone living where they can be out on their front porch right now, then shout out and tip of the hat to you. I still consider what we're doing right now just people talking. Problem is, though, there's like people around town. Everyone's pretty much too busy to talk, though. So, as there's lots of things to be optimistic for, don't sit back. Don't sit back for this next day, week, month, year, 2 years, 4 years. Because, again, Second Amendment supporters especially, but people generally have this nasty habit of, oh, we're kind of like winning a little bit right now in certain ways. And we are. And I want to be optimistic about the things we are winning at. But I had to get into all these somber topics just to remind you that, like, this ain't over. Like we still need to stay vigilant every single day for the Second Amendment. And when there's Republicans in power, they need to start repealing stuff. The United States House of Representatives, Republican majority. The United States Senate and the president. That's called the trifecta. Think about that for a minute. There should be gun control repealed literally no matter what. Let me know if you think that'll happen or not. But that's our job to try to advocate, because, again, they're only supposed to be able to operate or govern at the consent of the governed. And if you tell them you consent, well, obviously you consent. But if you literally do nothing, then the tough part is that's actually consenting too. So if somebody walks up to you and says, give me all your money, and they take it out of your pocket and you do nothing, might be a little less. It might be the smart thing to do in the moment because they've got a gun pointed to your head. But for whatever reason, even if it's by force, you are consenting to it. It might not seem like it is as much as you just pulling it out of your pocket and just handing it to them. But at the end of the day, they've got all the money that was in your pocket, and now you're walking home, ain't got a nickel for a phone call, and here you are, right? I'm going to jump off in just 1 second here, but I had someone just ask me the other day. They're like, dude, because I told them, look, I'm going to Lansing on January 8th. I'm excited about the opening day of the legislature so I can talk to representatives about the Second Amendment and what plans are for bills that will be being introduced. Okay? Pressuring, and again, you don't have to be mean about it, but you have to look at it this way. Pressuring the speaker to come in right away and repeal some policies that he has the power to. At least one that he can, like, right away. Things like that. And they're like, I thought the session's over and the Democrats are out of the Michigan House now. I'm like, well, they're not out. It's just the Republicans took the majority back. They're still there. There's just a couple less of them than there were. And I'm like, well, yeah. And they're like, why would you be going there? Like, you're wasting your time. I'm like, what do you mean? Why am I wasting my time? And the answer was real quick. They're like, dude, we're good now. I'm like, what do you mean we're good now? Like, this is good news that the Republicans took the majority in the Michigan House. Because could you imagine all the stuff they rammed through if that wasn't the case? Oh, it can always get a lot worse. You think things are bad as they can get? No, things can always get worse. As long as you still have a breath left in your body, things can always get worse. Trust me. For many people, dying isn't the worst thing at all, actually. But my point is, it can always get worse. But even if things are a little less worse, they can still be a lot better. I'm like, what do you mean we're good? They're like, dude, the Democrats are gone. The Republicans took over. We're good. Why would you even show up to Lansing? I'm like, well, because there's some people up there that might need a little extra encouraging. Okay? There might be some people there that need to be heard loudly, that they need to toe the line and make sure they're voting for the Second Amendment. Then there's other ones up there, quite a few actually, believe it or not. I'm being serious. Go up there with me. Talk to these people. You'll see what I mean. There's a lot of people in the Michigan House of Representatives that are like, all right, I can't wait to get these bills typed up and presented to repeal this, repeal that. So I don't know, man. The whole like, oh, we're just good, so we stop and do nothing. Why can't it be a win-win? Why can't it be like we're in a better place right now? So let's have an optimistic attitude. Let's push the ball forward. It sucks only playing defense all the time, right? Why can't we, in a positive way, in a constitutional way, be excited and be like, all right, now there's the majority. And I'm just giving you guys my state house as one example. We can look at this on the federal level, your state, whatever. Think about it. Okay, now that they're in the majority, nothing's guaranteed. It never is. Now let's, in a positive momentum way, push the ball forward and start trying to make a change. One more time. Can the Michigan House of Representatives cram stuff through and repeal gun control laws in the next 2 years? No, actually, they can't, because Gretchen would veto and the Senate wouldn't even take up the bills. But even if they did let them out of committee, which they wouldn't, they would vote them down on a partisan majority. But that's all the more reason why. we need to be energetic, especially if you live in Michigan with the Michigan House of Representatives, because they need to show us there's a difference between the Republicans and Democrats. They need to show people that there's a reason to come out and vote in 2026 so that the House can retain its majority for another 2 years, and also have people voting up and down that ballot to get and this is how you have to look at it. You look at this first, then the party, a pro-Second Amendment Republican governor and pro-Second Amendment senators in office. You do that, and then I could be like, all right, Representative Thompson, I urge you, and I better not be the only one, because why would she just listen to me, right? It would need to be enough people where it gets her attention, right? Now, Jamie Thompson's a bad example because she already has stuff that she's ready to do, but to support the Second Amendment. But for any of the reps, you need to have enough of you go in there and say, look, Jamie doesn't even need to tell us to. She already has plans for the Second Amendment, is my point. But look, you go in there, enough of you tell them, we need to repeal the, you go to, say you live in my district, go to Jamie Thompson. We need to repeal the safe storage bill. We urge you to sponsor that bill. Let's pretend they have the trifecta in 2 years, right? Say she says, all right, that's an awesome idea. Let's do that. Then you go into Senator Joe Bellino's office and you say, all right, you need to start working on things for when that gets over to the Senate. You know what I mean? So it's not that we're stuck for 2 years. I mean, yes and no, Tom, but I'm trying to be a little more positive than that. Yeah, you could say that, and you're not wrong, but I don't want to look at it as we're stuck for 2 years. Look, the Democrats kept on with their plan for all those years they were in the minority. I think we have 2 years to try to get people's butts out of bed and off the couch and out there and get people energized, where we can come back in 2 years and get all this flipped around and then actually start repealing gun control. And that's in the state of Michigan. And also, if you look at it in the United States, the U.S. Congress, hey, these are 2-year terms. Statistics would show and trends would show most likely the U.S. House of Representatives will probably flip back to Democrat, in 2 years. Now, I'm not wanting that. I'm not jinxing it. I'm just saying there's better chances than not. Probably the United States House will flip to Democrat in 2 years. It usually does if you look at this set of circumstances. That's what happened when Trump was in office last time, right? So, yeah, in the United States, they better be repealing something, and right now is the time. I appreciate that, Crazy Heathen, and I know you will. I know there's a lot of people that will. I just hope there's enough. We had one lone sponsor of the show tonight, so I know all of you guys who support on a regular basis are continual sponsors, so shout out to all of you. But tonight we have a new channel member, Rescue Nut. Awesome. Rescue Nut became a YouTube member, and I appreciate the support, and thank you for sponsoring the show. It definitely goes to good use because, well, politicians, when it comes to on the federal level, certainly campaign from the day they get elected till the next election, right? And have super PACs and Citizens United and all that. This channel does not have any super PACs or anything like that. It is grassroots, so I do appreciate the support from you and from everybody else who does. All right, well, that's my forecast update. I never said we're all screwed for the year, but at the same time, like, a lot's changed just in the last week, a little bit less than a week, where I'm like, yeah, I don't know. There's only going to be so many mass tragedies, and they're going to try to put forth massive gun control. If or when that happens, then, well, maybe not. Maybe people don't have enough lead in their pencil anymore. I don't see the economy getting better real soon either, actually. I hope it does, but I'm getting a little less optimistic about that day by day lately. But we'll see. I hope. I'm trying to be real positive here. I really am. But a lot of times people go on panic buys. It can be hard to get the guns and ammo that you want. Things are still a good market right now. People are also still broke right now. So that's my forecast. I don't even know that I gave you my forecast, just that I'm not so sure it's time to put your head in the sand and say everything's going to be perfect, but don't like go taking long walks off short piers or anything like that, because there are still some things I'm optimistic about as well. All right. I will talk to you guys all again soon. Thanks for watching and have a good one.